first of all, sort of thank you for coming on and doing this. I know you've got your own podcast going at the same time, so it's nice to actually do some joint content. But first of all, I kind of wanted to get some insight because you're someone who does business within the UK and outside the UK. I wondered if there was any sort of wisdom you could pass on about how people could be improving what they're doing now. And then I kind of want to touch on the present, but really focus on the future, because I think everything that can be said about the present has been said and is already out there now. So I think, the big opportunity we've all got is to do some planning, and to start focusing on what we could all be doing in the future and what the future might look like. So if that's all right with you, we'll sort of structure it that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, thanks for having me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think the way that people are going to change their working habits in the future is probably one to focus on. I mean, funnily enough, so I was saying about the pitch that we're kind of getting ready for. We're finding that most of our clients now, there's two things going on. One is they obviously can't do any face-to-face activity. And I think that's going to be something that I don't think it's going to be something that's going to get turned back on very quickly. I sort of predict that CES will probably be cancelled as well.
Yeah.
Because if you think, and the thing that might stop it being cancelled is if a vaccine's found.
Yes.
And we all know that the UK are pioneering that, and sort of, I think they started their live trials yesterday.
It's in Oxford, just down the road from me.
Yeah, well, we're in the same neck of the woods, aren't we?
Oh, of course, yeah, you're Aylesbury, aren't you?
Yeah. I think if the vaccine happens, then I don't know, this may change, but companies are going to have to just completely rethink how they do their marketing, because they've been so institutionalized into going to conferences all through the year to kind of address different parts of their market, and now it's all suddenly being taken away. So the marketing and the project launches still need to happen, but it's just kind of how that sort of factors in. So we're finding that a lot of clients that we work with are now suddenly asking us to rethink what we're doing. So it's like, let's say with the pitch this morning, we spent, I don't know how long we spent doing this proposal, and had a kind of an 18-month rollout planned for this particular product launch. But obviously some of the key milestones in that plan have now potentially been taken away.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, well, how do we kind of replace those activities? I mean, the irony is that I actually think that by taking away the exhibitions, it does free up quite a lot of budget to do things. I mean, I know certain clients, I don't want to name who, but I know one of them spends something like 2 million euros on a stand at IFA.
Wow.
That's just a stand. Kind of getting that thing built. Now, we were looking at, a new way of doing a digital launch at Gamescom. So with Gamescom and with a media partner, getting influencers, even like a kind of, a TV celebrity who would kind of fit in the genre of what we're doing. When you add all that up, thinking they'll never sign this budget off, we're still looking at, 1/8 of what this particular client would have spent on their stand.
Mm-hmm.
And they would end up getting a much wider reach, huge amounts of content, something that would really kind of, add value to their brand. And I think when companies kind of, put two and two together and start to realize, we've been spending all this money for years, and actually, we could be doing digital and really, really attacking exactly the market we want to go after with this spend, and kind of learning iteratively. I just don't think that they're going to go back to, the way they used to do marketing before. And, it kind of presents another problem for brands as well, because I think they potentially don't have the skills in-house to kind of manage this new type of marketing.
Yeah.
Because think of traditional marketing managers, they've been focused on, and this is no offense to marketing managers, but, if you've been focused on a particular type of marketing, like, a lot of these guys might be spending 3 months getting ready for IFA, or, the same getting ready for IFA or CES. And now suddenly, those events could potentially be ripped out from underneath them. They've now got to focus on something that they were only focusing 20% of their time on. So some of them, I'm sure, will adapt and learn on the move. But, some of them just might really struggle with kind of, what this new world looks like, because they don't know themselves 50% of the things they could potentially be doing. So,
Do you think a lot of people are making up, the barriers that they're seeing are actually just barriers in their head then? Because it does make sense if you've only been spending, 20% of your time on the thing that's the only available option now, which is social and digital and things that are online. The barriers to entry that people seem to think are in front of them, are they actually just missing, a bit of a skills gap?
Yeah, I just think some of them just don't know what they don't know. I mean, that's the problem. So they're kind of getting a bit stuck potentially, because when all these traditional things have been taken away from them, they don't know what they can be doing. And that, it's a problem. I mean, I know, I'm a bit older than you, and I've been running my agency for, nearly 20 years. And, when you kind of look at the various stages of how the agency's developed, I see it within agency as well. So when we first started 20 years ago, we were a sort of pure media driven agency, very kind of old school, all about taking journalists out, getting them drunk, getting the relationships built, and that's what our clients were paying for, those relationships that we had with media. You roll it on 10 years and you've suddenly got, the kind of formation of digital. Because don't forget, when I started in PR, we didn't even have the internet. Mm-hmm. You had a phone and you met people, and, Friday afternoons were great. We never worked on Fridays. It was kind of like get drunk, appear Monday sometime.
You know what? I was talking to Chris Taylor about this from Exeter the other day. He was talking about how when he was at Sony, there was no such thing as the internet. So any customer query came via handwritten letter, and they were dictated into a dictaphone, given to a secretary, typed up as a reply, given back to him to sign, and then sent to the postman.
You can imagine a world where you would send a press release out, and the client wouldn't bother you about coverage until about 3 months later.
Yeah.
Because that was the cycle of, of media. Now you send the press release out, the client's, expecting a report in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's instant, isn't it? Instant.
Why isn't it on whatever? And it's like, and I get that, and it's fine, but it's kind of, that was, we were used to working, and, everything's just getting shorter and shorter all the time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, my point before about, skills. So you got 10 years ago in my agency, people are starting to integrate digital, or digital starting to become, we're aware of it. So things like, Facebook are appearing, Twitter's appearing, websites are appearing a bit more, and people are starting to develop their websites a bit more. Because I used to do the, I don't know if you know this, but I did the PR for Macromedia, which was Flash and Dreamweaver.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, with Macromedia, I was the agent working on the account within the agency that had Macromedia. So we won that account and launched Flash. I think it was Flash MX and Dreamweaver MX, I think it was called at the time, across Europe. So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, so you get to the point where, you've suddenly got all these old school PR people having to start to learn digital skills. And there is an enormous amount of pushback, because suddenly you've got, well, I do media, I don't do digital. And it's kind of, you roll that on to now, our expectation when we hire people is that they know all of this stuff. And they can't just say, I only do social media, I only do influencers, I only do, video content, because, as a communications person, they need to do all of it. And I've seen the struggle to get people to that point, because, I think they finally had to, stop thinking that they're specialists when they work in a comms agency and start to learn everything. And I think within brands, they're going to have to go through that whole process a lot quicker, because now everything's just been ripped away. They're now all about digital, and they've got to suddenly learn on the job or not keep their job, I think, is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how fast as well a lot of technologies have been accelerated. The amount of people who are now using things like Twitch, and the fact that TikTok almost felt like it came out of nowhere to take over, and there's all this new short form content to make. And really, it's nothing new, but it seems like such a huge gap to sort of jump over, and new skills for creating content that need to be learned. And I think people are maybe a little bit intimidated by that, because especially if you've been doing traditional, like you say, and you suddenly jump into a digital space that you remember as being Facebook and Twitter, and it's completely different to that now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they can't do it, but it's like, even I would struggle if I suddenly had to go into, an account and start to, I don't know, do all their Facebook ads and start to analyze it, and, I wouldn't really know what to do. And it's kind of,
Yeah.
and that's what we're going to expect, and, brands are going to expect. It's, by the way, with TikTok, I want to get your opinion on this. I sit there and watch TikTok with my kids sometimes, and the content on there is like hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
How they come up with this stuff? It's like what? Like, I mean, it's like they're all on, class A drugs with this just like, insane stuff. And it's like, I just find that, because we've obviously got, YouTubers and video that's done on Instagram and stuff like this, but I don't know what it is about TikTok videos, but they're just very, very good and creative, some of them.
You know what it's like? It's like a new version of hashtags, and this is a kind of a weird analogy, but there's loads of trends. So there's like a Drake song, and everyone emulates the Drake song because there's a dance that you follow, which you may have seen.
I learned this dance, by the way.
Yeah. Or there's a section of a song, or there's a bunch of people who voice over movie quotes, so they mime movie quotes and things like that as well. So it's almost like the video version of a hashtag. It's a trend that everybody follows, and your video gets added to the pile of people emulating Wolf of Wall Street, or yours. You get added to the pile of people doing the Drake dance and that sort of stuff. And it is really clever, and it gives a lot of people a lot of creativity, because effectively, let's be honest, it's an Instagram story, isn't it? It's a portrait video that lasts for about 15 seconds. It's an Instagram story, but the difference is that the age group is different. So people on Instagram, you would never post yourself dancing to a Drake song in your Instagram story. However, people seem to have this habit, and it's something in the mind that says, okay, but it's okay to post it here because it's relevant on TikTok. The content pillar is pretty much still the same, and making it is pretty much still the same. But there's just something about TikTok and the way they've created the culture in their audience that everyone is far more creative and far more willing to post something authentic and maybe even sometimes a bit embarrassing. But it's an interesting space to look at, that's for sure.
Yeah, it just embodies this current sort of state of social where, I think even TikTok as a platform has developed almost as quickly as something that's viral on TikTok.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Because even I'm sort of mid-40s, and I'm on WhatsApp groups with various friend groups, and even the older guys that I'm some dads at my kids' school, they're sending me TikToks on WhatsApp that they've obviously sent from their kids or something. So very funny.
Well, I think what the other funny thing about this is, how many conversations have you had with other parents about your kids watching? I don't know if your kids do this, but kids watching gamers play games.
Yeah.
On YouTube. How hilarious is it that now the whole world is watching F1 drivers play F1 games, and that's their entertainment?
Yeah.
And it's happened in like this flick of a switch. And it's so funny. Like a few months ago, we were taking the mick out of, how stupid is it watching another kid play a game? And literally the whole world has to do it now. It's really, the irony of it's hilarious.
Yeah, what I love about those F1s is some of the old drivers. Is it Johnny Herbert and some of the others are racing in there as well? They're still just as good as the new guys.
Yeah. Well, I think sim racing, and I've had this conversation already, and I would like to chat with you about esports actually, because you are very involved with it at Ranieri. And I've had the conversation with a few people about how close sim racing is. Very entertaining because the technology is so close to the real thing. It's not like watching football players play FIFA. These guys are actually sitting in some cases, thousands of pounds worth of kit, and it's almost like driving a real car. And there's maybe an opportunity after this for young drivers who've been doing well in sim racing to then move up to something like Formula 4. And I think that's really interesting about how we're laughing about, the fact people are watching gamers play games that has now become our version of sport while we're in this period. And then it may then flip back to how it was before, but a few of the gamers actually doing the real sport.
Hasn't this already happened though with Nismo?
Yes.
Drive Le Mans or something.
Yeah, it was actually Kieran Morris at Slingshot. He was working for Nissan, I believe. It was on our podcast. We talked about it. It was the kid who was driving the Nismo sim. He did Le Mans, in the first ever electric car. I don't think they finished the race, but it was certainly a massive step forward.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really. I mean, my first experience of this, obviously, because Ranieri has a gaming division, as you know, and there's lots of gaming specialists within the division, and we're actually starting to do the comms for some esports teams, which again is something that it's all new to me because I'm not a gamer, but 2 years ago last year I went to E3 and just started to watch some of the esports, tournaments in E3, and it's quite staggering. The people that are involved in those tournaments. I mean, there's like university teams that are kind of, I think they're almost making as much money as like the football teams in the universities. They've suddenly got this sort of cult following. That wasn't what was it? The guy that won the kids under 11 that won £1 million on Fortnite.
Yeah, it was the biggest sporting purse ever, apart from things like UFC. It was the biggest prize money ever offered for a sport. So it's more than Wimbledon, more than Masters.
Yeah,
and he was 11.
And at that time, there was a whole bunch of parenting questions being asked.
Yeah.
You've suddenly got a kid who's amazing at Fortnite and he plays Fortnite like 8 hours a day. I mean, my kids certainly aren't allowed to play, video games for 8 hours a day, but suddenly you're in a position where, like the mother's suddenly, parent of the year because her son's won the Fortnite Cup, but basically she's ignored him for 5 years.
Do you think there's a feeling amongst parents who kind of watch this, who are aware of the esports world, who maybe think they're robbing their kid of an opportunity? Because if you think about it, if Cristiano Ronaldo's mother made him go to school and not play football 8 hours a day, do you think there might be a thought in some parents' minds that, am I doing the same thing, but because I'm not used to the gaming scene?
Yeah, I'm probably of the generation which has crossed both worlds.
Yeah.
So when I was young, we didn't have any of this stuff. My parents used to drive us to Italy once a year because my background's obviously Italian. I'd been in a car for 2 days without an iPad and no air conditioning and driving down, the auto route in Italy in 40-degree heat. And the window open was, that was the thing that got me through it.
You got really good at I Spy then.
Yeah, now my kid can't walk across the kitchen without turning on an iPad or listening to that idiot Morg.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the whole, but I think, back then we would watch Saturday afternoon TV. We'd watch the A-Team, Knight Rider, whatever it was. Now the kids are watching their own content that, they're creating for themselves, that they're then watching for themselves. Back in the old days, I mean, we were, when you're thinking about it, we're watching, like the A-Team, take an example. So when my son he's 11, I was probably 11 watching the A-Team. You're watching grown men walking around shooting each other.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Now we're complaining about, first-person shooter games. Like, what's the difference? Really? It's just... Yeah.
Even when I was kids, that's what I was doing in the park. You were picking up a stick and shooting each other. It's pretty much what me and my friends did in the woods.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, kids, I mean, we were watching TV back then, they're watching gaming now. I mean, I do think that it's getting a little bit out of control where people are watching too much stuff. Like, I can definitely see, formations of an addiction in my kids, where the way they kind of are walking around with their tablets and kind of, they don't realise they're doing it. And that's the thing. I think you can sort of see it. They're just sort of, it's hard to get them off it to go to bed. They wake up, you come down in the morning, they've already turned on like a tablet to watch YouTube. It's like, it's getting very difficult to police. And that's the thing that worries me. It's just kind of, you roll it on to the next generation and just like, I don't know, at what point do they start, go looking outside and stop looking at screens, because they're going to miss a whole load of stuff as well.
Yeah, well, I think especially now, considering the circumstances, it is literally the window to the outside world. I think that's the problem. We're going to have a few months of that is the only option. Yeah.
And now, I spend my life trying to get them off tablets, and now they're doing virtual learning on their bloody screens from school.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to help the situation.
You have it. I mean, the thing is as well. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you haven't got kids, have you? No.
No, not yet.
But like, so they're doing their virtual learning at school, and then they'll then call each other on Teams and just then have their social interaction over Teams. So it's kind of, and when they're not doing any of that and having some downtime, they're watching YouTube. It's kind of
Yeah.
really hard to sort of at the moment keep them away, and I really worry at the moment they're spending. They're going to almost create a dependency on screens that they then won't. It'll be hard to kind of break when we do get out of lockdown.
Yeah, but if you think about it though, how different is that to my day or your day?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I used to get thrown out of the house into the garden, door locked, and like 8 hours later, I was let back in.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is our day as of today. So the first thing I do when I wake up is turn on my phone, and then my computer. Call. I'm calling you through Zoom now. I then will probably go and watch something on Netflix later and be on my phone until I fall asleep. I think I can totally see the argument for a parent and a child, but at the end of the day, I think even the adults right now are doing exactly the same pattern, and I think that's probably why it's been followed by the next generation, because it is just what life is like at the moment.
Yeah, I do worry about. I mean, I get that it is of the moment, but I do think that I don't know the content that's out there. I mean, particularly YouTubers that I'm aware of that I hear quite a lot from coming from my kids' iPads. But it's just some of the stuff is just. I just feel like it's destroying their brains.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like to use this word, but I'm not going to use it. But it's just like these people, like it's like they're doing pranks that aren't really that funny.
Yeah.
They're kind of, going in and like buying, I don't know, like burgers for 24 hours from McDonald's drive-throughs. They're like, giving away or going into a store because they're nicking their mum's credit card and going into a store and buying like iPads and iPhones. And it's all obviously a stage. You can see it's staged.
Yeah.
There's another one that's, I can't remember the name of it now. But basically it's like, like the dark web, but it's like a kid's version where he's saying he's got to save YouTube before these people are going to shut it down. But if you subscribe and buy his T-shirts, it will help him against like this thing. And all these kids are like buying his merch to basically stop you. And I'm like, Gabriel, think about it. Like he's not going to shut YouTube down because that's how he makes his money.
Yeah.
So massive, but it's fun. Like it's kind of, but it's fun and it's not fun. But I just the content is just. It's not like a good old sort of, I don't know, like program that's been well thought out and it's got humorous and it's got some kind of class about it. It's just absolute idiots.
You get what though, you get sucked in, because I had exactly the same thoughts about. There was a guy who watches Fortnite. My partner's nephew. He can watch it 8 hours a day if he was allowed, probably more. And I sat there and I was like, what on earth are you watching? Because it's an Australian guy who's just banging on about what's happening in the game and making funny noises. And I was like, what is this? And he put it on the TV while I was working. And I honestly did find myself, whether it was because it was annoying or what, but I was looking over my laptop and I found myself for periods of, I wasn't thinking at all, but I'm staring at the TV for like 20 minutes at a time. and then forgetting what I was working on. I was like, oh my God, it's almost like it brainwashes you. But you do get drawn in and you do end up just, because it's easy to watch, mindlessly watching it.
You realise as well that it's kind of, it ends up it's choosing what to watch next for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because you're sort of watching the videos and then suddenly the next one's playing and it's kind of, so it's taking you on its own journey as well.
Oh yeah. The algorithms have got an excellent, it's almost like when you watch Netflix though, isn't it? You binge watch a series. YouTube will literally binge watch the next related series for you.
The other thing I found the other day was my next door neighbours came for a drink on our drive the other day, obviously respecting social distances.
Yeah.
He brought with him this thing called a fat boy, the big...
Yeah, the big chair, yeah.
Yeah. And what I found staggering, I suddenly realised that everywhere I look on my social platforms are adverts for the fat boy.
Yes, you know why that is. It's because you will received retargeted ads based on what your friends are searching for. It
Because also,
seems it's like Big Brother is watching, isn't it?
like, he brought the thing to my drive the next day. How did they know he brought it to my drive?
Well, it won't be. It won't be the. It won't be the chair in itself. It may be that you or your wife has either messaged them on Facebook or talked to them or commented or liked or checked in some way. And then based on what he's searching for, you'll have been served an ad. You'll have probably been served 100 ads. It's just that you won't have noticed 99 of them. It'll just be one of them that you remember.
That's true. I just find it like, that's the first time I've looked up and went,
Yeah.
why am I getting ads for that? I mean, I've literally been on my drive.
I mean, I might be wrong. They might be looking at you from a drone somewhere up in the sky. But I know about, it's my job to kind of know about some of this stuff, and even I get weirded out on many occasions.
My wife did tell me that she searched for it,
Mm.
but it was on her computer, not mine. I've got separate stuff.
But
That's
if you're
what I found more.
Yeah, if you're friends on Facebook, though, obviously, that's how it serves it. It can base it on Lisa's search terms, and because you two are connected on social or on Facebook, it can serve it to you as well because it realizes that you're within that core audience of mutual friends or mutual family with her.
Yeah, I mean that was incredible. Whoever's doing Fat Boys like retargeting, they're doing a good job.
Yeah, exactly. I often go, God, that's scary, but I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, I get, because I obviously through my job I'm researching clients and prospects and stuff like that, and it can be quite annoying when you've just kind of spent your heart and soul trying to do a pitch for somebody, you lose it, and then you then continually get ads for their product for the next.
Yeah, that really rubs salt into the wound, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I know it's good. Screw you.
I know it's good. That's why I was pitching for it. Can we move on to? I know we were talking about YouTube. Can we talk about influencer for a second? Because I'm seeing stuff all over the place, and I've got my own opinion on this, but I'm interested in what you think. I'm seeing loads of white papers, loads of blogs and stuff about how the influencer bubble is going to burst. I mean, this has been a story over and over again over the last 3 years since influencer has ever been a thing. Do you think that this whole period of lockdown is going to burst it, or are influencers actually innately in some way of a better position?
I think that in the early days, influencers charged way too much money. And, if you can get it, you can get it. I mean, I think people didn't really understand it. And they thought that, they could just get an influencer to mention something and, job done. I mean, I've seen stuff where I worked on a startup brand called Yubble, which was supposed to be a competitor to WhatsApp, which was, it was funded, and we didn't organize it, but they used KSI. Mm-hmm. And all he did was mention Yubble within the middle of a video, and I think he got paid something like 150K for it. And like, it did absolutely nothing. Like, didn't move the needle at all. And there was a lot of that going on. I think influencers now are, there's huge amounts of them, and the struggle that we have now is kind of working out which influencers to use for which campaigns.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure we know that we 100% know that influencers are of value to a comms campaign, but it's now trying to find the right balance between, all your kind of content creation, using influencers to create content and get it out there, and what the kind of balance should be. Mm-hmm. I think with everything becoming much more digital, I mean, I do think that influencers, there'll be a lot more of them, just because, I think inherently there's going to be more influencers just kind of developing. It's kind of eating up into the sort of more traditional media's, usual sort of market, because basically, it's like saying before, I mean, kids are growing up now not looking at media, they're looking at YouTubers and their social accounts for kind of information. I just think that, it's going to balance out where influencers are definitely not going away. They're really important, and, as part of a comms mix, but I think they're going to have to start working for their money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as an influencer, you've got to change the way you're thinking, and I think this period of time now is the perfect time to do it, because if you think about it logically, there isn't a single brand out there at the moment who can do a photo shoot or a video shoot for a product or a demonstration, really, unless the product manager at home is going to do the demo himself, but he doesn't have an audience. And I think the big opportunity for influencers right now is, if there are brands out there that do have a product launch coming up that they can still launch, i.e. if it's a new game or a new piece of tech, they can use an influencer to basically create their video demo, or they can create their promotional video, because it's not like you can call up someone like Momentum, like ourselves, to go out and grab one of your products and film you a great product series or a demo. And that's the way influencers should really be being used at the moment. But I think, like you say, the influencers themselves haven't cracked the idea yet of breaking out of the "I'll just get paid for putting one post out." They need to change the way they actually work themselves to win that brand budget.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things there. One is, I mean, we actually won a client a few weeks ago, a Korean client, and they're only doing influencer activity,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So we've got a budget to kind of use some sort of micro-y type influencers to review products in a sort of gaming situation, because they feel that that's the way to go. So they're not even considering like media and stuff anymore. I personally think you should have a balance of, you still need to do some media comms, you still need to do some influencer work, we still need to create some of our own content and kind of balance it out. I think the problem with influencers is a lot of them have come initially from just kind of becoming popular on like YouTube, for example. They weren't kind of business people before. And what they've done is they've kind of got on this sort of bandwagon a bit of thinking, right, well, I've got loads of subscribers, so therefore I should be paid loads of money. And then they also then demand their money immediately. And it's kind of like, I think it's a bit like, well, someone's going to pay me this money, shit, I better get paid quick before they come to their senses.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the ones that are going to kind of succeed are going to start to put the two and two together to realize that, the influencers, just like media have done over the years, that media, influencers, brands, they're all in this sort of ecosystem where they all feed each of each other. At the moment, some influencers, not all influencers, but some influencers are putting themselves as the kind of on top of that pile, or actually everyone is equal within this ecosystem, because media need information from PR people. PR need to have brands to kind of work for, to give it to the media. The influencers, won't get paid unless the brands are supported and are making money, and kind of all this stuff kind of goes on. And it's, once the influencer becomes a bit more kind of business savvy, and they understand that they need to work with brands, need to work with their agencies to kind of do, to create really good work, kind of, do follow up, understand, what worked and what didn't. Because there is a kind of, influencers create their content their way for their channel, which I totally get, but they should also be doing that bit of 360 analysis to go back to the brand. Did the brand get value from it? And what can I learn for next time? Just like we would do as an agency, we would ask our clients, has this campaign been successful? What worked, what didn't, what can we improve for next time? You never really get that from influencers. It's kind of more, here's my content, where's my cash?
Yeah.
It's not.
I think you're right. It's always a very short-term relationship, and the influencers that I know that succeed really well, and hopefully in the next week I'm going to have a couple of them on the podcast as well to talk about this. The influencers that succeed are the ones who are more business savvy, and they, rather than trying to find the next cash, they're doing what you say and reviewing everything and making that relationship last longer. Because ultimately, if you were an influencer, you've got no security if you just do everything short term. And I've done this myself. 1 month you can make thousands of pounds, the next month you can make 400 quid. And if you do the review of everything and keep that client relationship going, you're going to give yourself security, and that's especially going to be needed in times like these.
Yeah, if it was me, and I was an influencer, I would, rather than trying to make 100 grand in one hit, and then never see me again, like, KSI and that Yubble thing. I mean, he did well. He got 150 grand and never heard from him again.
Yeah.
But, if I was an influencer now, I'd be like, well, okay, if your budget's, I don't know, 25K, how can we work like a longer program where we get paid over a period of time and work with each other to create content that works for you and like meets your KPIs and, does what needs to be done? Because then you've got an ongoing relationship. You can almost become like your own little agency where the product is yourself.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
You're kind of, you're building, some longevity in what you're doing. And then suddenly the brands are going to be like, yeah, I want to work with this guy because, or girl, because, they're thinking about what's best for the brand. They're not just trying to get in, take it. I mean, you've got to look at the business model of some of this as well, what's going on. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of agents in between. And, agents, there are some good ones out there, but there are also ones that are just really pushing, an influencer to get a contract signed so they get their 20%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They don't really care about a 6 months campaign. They don't really care about the brand. It's kind of, they're just there to make quick money because, I think the agents at some point, when the influencers wake up and start to build relationships with brands directly and like agencies that work for those brands, they don't need the agents.
No.
And I do feel quite strongly about that because I think agents get in the way a lot of the time.
Yeah.
No friends saying that, but we know full well that they're taking a margin and they're separating us from the influencer, and it kills the creativity. Like, we could get a lot more out of the influencer in the campaign, and the brand could get a lot more if there was a lot more direct contact. But the agent doesn't like that, because once we've got the relationship, what does the agent need? What does the agent do?
Exactly. I've witnessed this firsthand as well, because I did a little bit of Instagram influencing, if you call it, and I've still got the platform, but I just don't use it as much now. But certainly, and it puts another step in the process that's not needed. I think a lot of the time it also it can put a lot of delay between getting briefs done and delivering content, reviewing the content. Because obviously, if you're, as the influencer, reviewing a content with the agent, and then the agent's reviewing it back to the brand, there's this huge step in the middle that's basically just, like you say, it could just be worked straight through and done directly. And I tended to try and do things direct as much as possible, because I kind of got it. But I think a lot of people who aren't as business minded don't, and an agent is just, to them, a safe expert that they can trust to make sure that they get money. And it's not always the case. It's certainly not always the case.
Yeah, because the agent's not even, it's not like you need the agent to find the influencer. We already know which influencer we want to work with, and we have to go through the agent to use them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all they've done is managed to sign up the influencer on a contract that says you can't do anything without me getting 20%.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's on the premise that, because I was offered a few back in the last few years, and at first you kind of go, oh yeah, actually it'd be really good, because you're looking for a guide basically. But what I soon realised is, if I just do the research myself, I was like, oh, it's not so difficult. But I think a lot of people who don't take that step, they do it because it feels safe, and you feel like you've got someone to guide you through this, what at first seems like a confusing industry to navigate, but actually it's not as confusing as it first seems.
Yeah, but if you also look at the foundation of how this happened, you've got like a YouTuber who's just creating content because it's a laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got 500,000 subscribers. An agent comes to him and says, "I've got this brand that wants to give you 100 grand, but I'm going to keep 20% for doing all the business side of it. You just need to sign this contract."
Yeah.
Who wouldn't turn down 80K when you've just been like in your bedroom playing Fortnite?
Exactly. Well, it's the same model as sports, isn't it? A guy gets talented at football, and an agent comes along and says, I'll get you into a Premier League team over the next few years, but I've got to take 20% of whatever salary you make. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like, you jump at the chance, but then actually you're kind of signing yourself to, I've seen it with brands as well. I mean, I think there was like Boots, I think they signed like, like there was some hair products that my wife used to work on, but they end up, so the Boots will give them a contract for like an exclusive deal,
Mm.
where they sell their product, but actually they're just basically restricting themselves to selling in one retailer
Yeah.
for the next however many years. So when they've got nothing and they're like, a brand that's come out of nothing and suddenly Boots offers them this contract that says we're going to stock your product. It seems like a lot of money at the time, but then suddenly once they've started selling, the next step is where else can I sell? But they can't because they're signed up to this. It's like it's ridiculous. Boots are laughing.
Yeah, it's always that same problem as well, isn't it? You need that first big break, but then you often end up outgrowing the break before the contract ends, don't you? And
Yeah.
it happens
Like
time and time again.
Winning a big client, but then that client says, right, you can't work for anyone else now.
Yeah. Do you think that there's going to be a bit of a resurgence of this though, when people start trying to monetize Twitch and they're not monetizing Twitch, they're already doing that. Start trying to monetize TikTok, because I think it's people do this when they don't understand something, and they just go, yeah, this is a big break. We know that all the attention is on this platform. We don't really know what the platform is about, but we want to throw some money at it. Do you think this is where all these contracts get put in place and people they do the move because they think they need to, but they don't really know why?
Yeah, I know our influencer guy internally was pushing the TikTokers, probably would have been a year ago, just basically saying all these TikTokers at the moment they were charging like tens of pounds.
Yeah.
And I think as agencies, we all understand the value now of influencers and kind of how they can be integrated into campaigns and kind of what we should be paying, because there's now lots of kind of data from Instagram, YouTube, like what these people are worth and kind of what their potential is. So I think the people in the industry kind of know what they're worth, but TikTokers, again, there's probably a bunch of them that are suddenly getting popular that are going through this journey of being signed up by agents. And
yeah, exactly. It's almost like a catch-22, isn't it? Like TikTok is still currently just about mass reach and mass eyeballs, much like Facebook was whenever it was, 2008, and much like Instagram was a few years ago. But it almost seems like these platforms go through the same cycles. They have a wide open algorithm where you can reach millions and millions of people at the same time, and brands jump on it. And then as it starts getting monetized, that gets brought down and down and down and tapered. And yeah, it happens every time. And I put money on that happening, and it probably is happening already on TikTok. And I know it's already happened on Twitch, and it's the same story.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the other thing as well is, it's you've just got this whole bunch of people who are from all walks of life, and us sat here as agency people understand the value, but all these people, they might be, I don't know, a student or an 11-year-old kid, all sorts of things. They just don't understand the value in what they've got. And if someone offers them some cash and just says, it's almost like you've been discovered by someone giving you a contract, like the football thing. It's just going to keep repeating itself, and I'm sure there'll be another platform that everyone will then jump onto, because as each generation comes through, it's like now, like my kids aren't on Facebook, but all they're interested in is YouTube and TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
When they have kids, I'm sure it'll be another platform, and like probably within the time they're at school, there'll be other platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think everyone understands the value of attention, but not everybody understands what attention really is. Everyone understands the value of loads of people seeing something, but they don't necessarily understand what types of people are seeing it, or what the value of an 11-year-old seeing your ad for something that an 11-year-old would never buy.
Sorry, go on.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, when my kids were young, that's when I really started experiencing YouTube for the first time. Well, not experiencing it, but sort of seeing how trying to understand some of the numbers. Because my Gabriel, when he was young, which was, he's 11 now, so this is like he was 2, 3, whatever it was. He was watching these YouTube videos of like this crazy dude opening packets of sweets and chucking them on a table.
Right.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's quite mesmerizing. But to a kid, like, basically he'd be opening like massive bags of Skittles, and it was all going onto a table, and he was just like making these silly noises and stuff. I was looking down at the numbers, and there was like 33 million views,
Mm.
and there's obviously ads on there, and you just sat there thinking, because the thing is, all the people watching these videos are like toddlers. So you've got all this money being paid by brands, being repaid to the guy creating these videos, and not one penny of it is any value.
Well,
Those 3-year-olds aren't going out and buying stuff.
the other thing, the interesting thing with YouTube is YouTube will, much like, in fact, I think all platforms do it. I know Facebook does, but YouTube will also pay them based on their views for the pre-roll ads and how many eyeballs are on there. Not because of who's watching it, but for the legacy of the people watching it. So even if it's a toddler watching it, that toddler is going to grow up. And if the people on YouTube can keep the toddler watching YouTube as they grow up to a purchase age, and it's a bit cynical thinking of it that way, but that's kind of the model behind it. It's pay these influencers to keep putting out this content so that the pre-roll ads are being watched. Maybe for the first few years of their life they're not worth watching, but as the person stays on the platform and gets older, it's that legacy of someone starting to watch at 4 or whatever and getting to a point where they're now a teenager and can badger their parents to buy something that they've seen on a pre-roll ad.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to wonder if the same types of ads are on the same videos that they watch now then.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to do a bit of research on that, actually. But it is that legacy of, they may be served something that's not for a child at the start. It might be something that, because if they are a really young toddler, yes, it's a toddler watching the video, but the likelihood is there's a parent sitting on their shoulder.
Yeah, I suppose the other confusing thing for the algorithms is that they're probably logged into my YouTube account.
Yeah, that'll be a factor as well.
Yeah, so my profile must look really messed up.
Yeah, because there'll be all of your, like you said about your client research, they'll be getting served loads of random consumer tech.
Sweets, Barbie dolls.
Yeah, exactly. I think sort of to wrap this up then, I think the other thing I just wanted to touch on is, how do you think communication is going to change when everything goes back to normal? Or are we going to go back to normal? It's sort of define what normal is going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, I don't think we're going to be going back to normal for, I don't know. I mean, if you put it based on the vaccine timeline, you're looking at, potentially a year and a half. Basically means that I think that, this will definitely be kind of, out in the open world, but our new norm is going to be some form of social distancing. It kind of completely changes the dynamic of how, humans interact, because, we're not going to be able to potentially go to pubs, clubs, restaurants in the same format that we did before for a long time. So it just means that I think by the very nature of what's going on at the moment, our world is becoming more digital. Our social needs as kind of humans are still there, but, that's going to get satisfied by kind of digital interaction, because we are not going to be able to interact in the same way for a time. And I think once it's been going on for, a year and 6 months, does that then just change the mentality, our behavioral patterns, and we start to kind of just act more that way? Because I'm sure that, the doomsday preppers are going to be, kind of, they're just going to continue this social distancing, and just suddenly, they're going to be, people aren't going to interact in the same way because they're just going to be terrified of this disease. Because don't forget, there isn't a cure. It can hit anybody. It is predominantly older people that are affected, but there's loads of cases of just, younger people as well. So it's nobody really knows. That's the thing. And I think while that uncertainty's there, for digital, it's just going to push everything a lot more digital. So yeah.
Do you think it's a bit like when the internet first came around, almost like a second stage? Because people went from going, "Oh, I'd never talk to my best friend over email," to then emailing their best friends and their colleagues habitually. Do you think this is like the next stage? We were usually going, "I'd much rather meet someone in person than do a video interview." But after this, we may start going, "Oh, actually, a video interview is actually more convenient because I save time on travel and I don't have to pay traveling expenses."
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about this current, period in our lives is that, we have been forced to social distancing and stay home, but actually the technology is there to keep us in touch.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like we've had to suddenly like create something new to stay in touch. Everything's been there, but what's actually happened is people have been forced onto it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People that, you know, would never, you know, I'm looking at my, you know, my son's school, for example. You know, you've got a whole bunch of teachers, a whole bunch of kids who now suddenly know how Teams works, Zoom works. They're quite comfortable sat there talking to a screen and doing their piano lessons, singing lessons. I mean, my kids are doing everything they would do at school just through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you've suddenly got, you know, to them, it's completely normal now to operate, you know, to function in this way. Whereas, you know, you look at anyone over, I don't know, 30 who doesn't work in an office environment, has never used Teams, never used Zoom, you know, they've never interacted in this way. There's suddenly all these apps like House Party, people streaming concerts, you know, they've just, you know, the whole population has been brought up to speed on tech that we all know and use every day, but in, you know, a 5-week period, and they've all had to learn it. So it's kind of, you know, it's like we were talking about brands earlier, you know, all these tools are already there for them to use, but they're now being forced onto it. So it's just, I just think that, you know, what we're experiencing now is going to continue. I mean, it will definitely kind of become a bit more relaxed, but you can't beat face-to-face interaction at the end of the day, whether it's through, you know, personal or business, but, you know, people aren't going to rely on kind of traveling. They're not going to feel like they need to kind of go out as much anymore, because but then it could also be a just massive backlash where, you know, for example, when my local village pub opens, I'm not planning to leave for about a week.
No, exactly. Yeah, there will be a massive rise in people just you know, running out of their homes immediately, which I'm sure is what we're all going to do. I think one of the smallest things I've noticed is Zoom calls. Before all this happened, usually when you go on a Zoom call, you would have no or very little video on the screen. And since all this, every single video is turned on Zoom now. And it's a really small thing I've noticed, but I think just those little changes in people's mentality of, you know what, I'd rather see a human being now. I don't just want to hide away. It's making us more open to digital interaction, I think, which is going to be interesting as we move forward in the future.
Yeah, I know the cloud services are definitely struggling as well, because I did a podcast yesterday with on my own podcast, and we do it on Zoom as well. And I noticed the video itself normally just kind of pops up and says it's ready.
Mm.
It was like a good sort of hour and a half before it suddenly like processed, and it was only like a sort of 20-minute video or something.
Oh wow, okay, right.
So Zoom's servers are obviously
very full.
Well, and I noticed Teams was dropping out every now and then because, you know, because Microsoft was giving it away for free, haven't they, so that everyone can get on it.
Yeah,
which is a masterstroke. But yeah, so it's it's interesting. I mean, it's does question like working methodology moving forward. I mean, because I think again we're going to have to, when we go back, there will probably be a form of social distancing in offices. At the moment, we've got an office where we couldn't fit everybody in if everyone had to have a 2-meter square around them.
Well, of course, yeah.
So it's definitely going to have to introduce some kind of, you know, half in, half out sort of scenario to start with, at least. But again, a lot of this is vaccine dependent, isn't it? So if they get their act together and create a vaccine and suddenly we can all get cured, then everything will probably bounce back to normal. But I just don't think that's going to be the case.
No. Do you think the 9 to 5 will survive as well?
What was that, sorry?
Do you think the 9 to 5 will survive as well, since we're all being more flexible now?
Yeah, I still think, I mean, I'm doing a podcast on mental health next week with some people from that sector. And one of the questions is about, you know, routine. And for sanity, people need to keep a routine.
Yeah.
I mean, when I originally went on my own 20 years ago, the whole reason why Ranieri appeared was because I had to get out of the house and get an office to maintain some kind of structure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I found that even back then I had international clients, and what I was finding was that I was starting to do calls later and later at night because they were US based, then getting up later, not getting changed in the daytime, and then just starting to work. You know, you go into your bedroom, answer a few emails, then you realize you've been there for 7 hours.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you know, the US wake up and you're having calls with them. You know, I think that 9 to 5 thing, I think actually is, it's a very old approach to work. but I think people need that routine for their sanity, because otherwise you just, look, we're business owners, so 9 to 5 doesn't apply to us.
No.
I think for most people, they need some structure, and because the thing is as well, if you don't work 9 to 5, what actually happens is it starts knocking onto everyone else in the organisation as well. So at the moment, I'm getting up. I get up at normal time. I sit down at my desk, but I'm an hour and a half earlier than I normally am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the same at night. And what's actually happening is we're starting to answer emails, which is encouraging other people to answer those emails. And then suddenly, you've got people working hours that, and the whole basis of employment and how people get paid and all that kind of stuff is structured around that time frame. So, and I just think from a mental health point of view, I think people should work to some kind of structure, because otherwise you just never turn off, and that is not great for mental health. So
yeah, that's interesting, because I'm filming another episode with a mental health psychologist in an hour's time, so I'll float a few of these things. Yeah, that's literally, I've got back to back. I've got 2 today. So yeah, I'll float a few of these questions with him next.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, well, I'm speaking to the CEO of Calm. So
yes, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy. So interesting. We've got John from the editor of PR Week. So we're kind of focusing it around agency mental health. So as in staff of agencies and like what they're going through at the moment. Obviously you've got, at the moment, especially, you've got people kind of not used to working at home and kind of probably feeling already quite anxious about just the fact that they're working at home. Can they still do their job? You've got all this uncertainty in the market, and it's just, I think people need to maintain that sense of normality.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're just going to crack up otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, we've hit the hour mark there, actually. So, I mean, unless you've got anything else in particular you'd like to share, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.